Nick Smith. Adventure level 7. Human. American. My knee throbbed in pain, while Regent Oakmore spoke to the High Dragon in a language that I couldn't understand. Oddly though, every once in a while I would hear something that I understood. It didn't take long to put two and two together. Are they speaking High Dragon? The same language that was on the pods? I asked Ten. Probably. What they are speaking is fairly similar to Drakon, Ten said. The translation program is even triggering on some of the words, as you've likely noticed. It would seem they share root words. Can you translate it? No, not yet. I've already been trying to extrapolate a translation, though. We'll see how it goes. The Regent and the Dragon continued talking to each other. It wasn't hard to tell that the Dragon seemed upset about something, and Oakmore looked confused. Then Oakmore turned to me. Nick, have you been in contact with the gods? He asked. I looked at York, Nash, and Renth. I hadn't exactly lied to them, but they're bound to be confused. Should I lie? A glance at the Dragon answered that question for me. Okay, the truth then. I took a deep breath and steeled myself. I think so, I said. When we were on our way here, we were attacked by bandits. There was an explosion, and one of our friends was hurt really bad. I used a healing spell on him, but ended up using all of my magic and passing out. While I was out, I had a weird dream that I'm not sure is a dream. And there was a thing in my dream that said mortals call it a god. I see. Oakmore's brow furrowed. Did it demand anything from you? It didn't feel like a demand, more like a suggestion, I replied, trying not to look at Nash and York. It said that if I didn't go to see the High Dragon, I wouldn't find my way home. Did it say anything else? Any suggestions as to what to do when you saw King Icinerath? It said that I needed to see the King Icinerath because some stupid Mer were about to do some stupid things which would prevent me from going home, and that my path would be clear after seeing him, I answered. Oh, it also said that other gods are watching me because I'm amusing. That's all it was able to say. Able to? Yes. It was under a pact that had bright red chains all over it. Understood. Oakmore turned back to the dragon for a moment, then turned back to me. Wait, what was the other choice, besides seeing King Icinerath? Shit. Well, it said that York would want to see some scholars that he knows to get the words translated, but the translation wouldn't get us anywhere. It told me that he would decline an invitation to see the High Dragon, and that I would need to make sure he didn't decline the invitation. Oh, York whispered. Oakmore nodded and turned back to the dragon. The two began to speak once more, and after a few moments the ember-red eyes of the High Dragon took on a slightly pink tint, and he began to look at me. It felt like he could see everything about me, and I got the distinct impression that I couldn't hide anything from him. It was an uncomfortable feeling, like someone walking into the bathroom with you and not leaving. The two continued talking when suddenly Oakmore prostrated. He gave a speech and Icinerath growled at him. After a quick back and forth, Oakmore raised his head. The king said something angrily, and Oakmore stood. He began gesturing dramatically, which was a confusing turn of events. Done, Ten said. Applying translation patch. Simply exceptional that his motives are driven by love. And love is such a rare form of motivation in the world. This is why I beg that you aid him in any way you can. I will consider it. How would my assistance be applied? Icinerath asked. It may not be the smartest move to speak up now, but I get the feeling that the king will be less mad at an interruption than he would be at eavesdropping. I took a deep breath and gathered my nerve once again. Excuse me, Your Majesty? I interrupted. Can you understand me now? It felt like every eye within listening distance turned to look at me. A quick glance around confirmed my feeling to be factual, and I suddenly felt very, very nervous. like I had committed the sort of taboo that is so obvious that everyone should know not to do it.
I can,
Incineroth said warily.
Explain.
Explain? Explain what? I looked at Oakmore, but he was completely dumbfounded and at a loss for words. The almost glowing eyes of the High Dragon narrowed at me, and I felt the sudden urge to improvise like my life depended on it. Before I could open my mouth, Ten stepped in. Repeat after me. I have a machine in my head that translates languages, Your Majesty, I parroted. It did not know High Dragon, but it knows Draken and was able to decipher what yourself and Regent Oakmore were saying by the context of our situation and comparing the two languages in real time. King Incineroth took a deep breath in through his nose, which immediately made me think of all the dragons I've seen in media that breathed fire. I tensed, but the flames never came.
Surprise after surprise, he grumbled. Regent, tell the civilians to go on about their business. I would speak to this boy.
Yes, sire, Oakmore bowed. As Oakmore began telling everyone present to go back to what they were doing, which appeared to confuse the chaperone of a group of children, Incineroth lowered his head nearer to me.
You are trying to get back home to your ailing lover, yes?
Incineroth asked softly. Yes, Your Highness.
And what, pray tell, will you do if she is dead by the time you return?
The question caught me off guard. It had been nagging at me somewhere in the back of my mind, but I consciously avoided actually thinking about it. As if thinking about it would somehow turn it into a reality. Being directly confronted with the truth of the possibility like this made me realize that I had been acting childish, pretending that it can't happen simply because I don't want it to happen. I would grieve, Your Majesty, I answered, unable to meet his eyes.
As one should,
Incineroth said, his head returning to where it had been.
It would be wrong of me to prevent the reunification of lovers, and it would be outright malicious of me to prevent one from mourning. I will aid you, boy.
Thank you, sire.
There is still the matter of how. I do not have the ability to transport you to your world, nor am I aware of any means to do so.
We have some writings. They were found on the altar that I was resting on, and we believe they're written in High Draken, or a language that is similar to High Draken, I explained. I turned to York and whispered for him to show Incineroth the writings. He didn't hesitate to reach into his robe, but gave me a look indicating that he had many, many questions while he did so. Incineroth leaned forward to study the rubbings that York had done.
These do not say much, but their context is grim,
Incineroth explained.
The first 5 symbols appear to be options. Close, open, begin, end, and destroy. Then there are 4 directional indicators with the word select in the center.
That's not much to go on, I said. We already knew that they were experimenting on me, Your Highness.
Indeed, but I now see why the gods sent you to me.
His face twisted into what could be called a grin.
Back in my youth, my father tasked me with ridding these lands of a plague. A cult of anonymous individuals who were kidnapping, torturing, and dismembering members of our citizenry. The investigators at the time believed the torture to be experimentation, and the purpose of the dismemberment was to hide their findings and mask their trail. The last time I saw the final symbol on this paper, it was emblazoned upon their robes.
My heart skipped a beat. Is this it? Who were they?
We weren't able to find out. Whenever one of their members was captured or killed, they would be incinerated from within by a flame that could not be quenched until they were but ash. Adventurers that were tasked with tracking them were able to discover their hideouts within Bolasir, and my father sent me forth to eliminate them from the land. They were quite magically adept, but no match for even a fledgling high dragon.
he explained, with a hint of pride in his voice.
I flew from hideout to hideout, killing as I went. I was even careful to preserve as much as possible, yet the hideouts did not yield many clues.
How long ago was this, Your Highness? I asked, hoping we could investigate one of these hideouts.
I eliminated the cult from Bolasir long before the demons invaded, but they remained a problem in other kingdoms. Once the demons invaded, all cult activities ceased, and they were not heard from during the entirety of the demon occupation. Some claimed that it was the cult that brought the demons to our world. Others believed that whatever the cult was researching was a threat to the demons, and the demons invaded our world to force them to cease and desist.
I paused for a moment to digest this information. A nameless cult that may have had something to do with the demonic invasion had somehow kidnapped me from my world and performed experiments on me? Maybe to make me fight for or against the demons? That definitely sounds like it could be the plot of an isekai, but why would the cult go to such lengths? Wouldn't it be easier to use their own members? Sire, do you know anything else about this cult? I asked.
I do, Incineroth said with another grin. They were most disruptive in a kingdom to the west ruled by dwarves. At the time I believed that this was because their leadership had taken refuge there, but my father wisely forbade me from interfering in the affairs of other kingdoms. I made certain that no trace of the cult remained in Bolasir, but it's likely that other kingdoms were less thorough. As a matter of fact, your existence is evidence of that being the case.
Psst, York whispered. What's going on? I gave York a brief explanation as I thought about what Incineroth had told me. The mighty High Dragon wasn't going to be able to get me home directly, but he had at least pointed me in a direction. West, to the Dwarven Kingdom. A small blossom of hope grew within me. The Dwarven Kingdom has to have something. Why else would the creepy god thing have sent me to the dragon? The Dwarven Kingdom to the west would probably be the Empire of Calcutta. It predates the demonic invasion and even the Kingdom of Bolasir, York explained. I nodded and turned back to Incineroth. Are you meaning the Empire of Calcutta, Your Highness?
Calcutta is the name, but it was not an empire before the demons. What is its current status, Regent?
Incineroth asked. It's thriving, my lord, Ogmore replied, turning his attention away from a growing flock of civilians.
Of course the pesky little buggers yet persist, the High Dragon grumbled.
And we have a contractual alliance with them, Your Highness. Incineroth's face contorted in disgust, and Regent Oakmore tried to hide a smile. I guess the High Dragon isn't a fan of dwarves. I glanced at Renth, glad that he couldn't understand the conversation. I was met with a look of concern and confusion.
Allied with them? Incineroth nearly spat. What a foolish regent we have. Tell me, Oakmore, what fancy baubles and little luxuries did the Dwarven royal family provide, that you and your kin may offer your backs as sheaths for their daggers?
The Dwarven royal line died out, sire. They fell in battle against the orcs shortly after you entered your slumber. The current ruler, Emperor Jack, is of the Norev family, and though he is crass at times, he is much less prone to subterfuge and dishonesty than the royal family was. Incineroth frowned, but I looked at Oakmore in a new light. I thought he was a whimsical and reluctant regent, but he had done his homework. He seemed to know the High Dragon's blind spots and exactly how to compensate for them.
Fine,
Incineroth sighed.
I give the Alliance my blessing, then. Returning to the original matter, Nick, you will need to seek more information on this cult in Calcutta. I hope you are more successful in your investigation than others were in the past. I grow weary, and as such will return to my slumber.
If I may, Your Highness, Oakmore interjected, we have had quite a long while to come up with a potential solution to the demon within you.
Oh?
Incineroth asked, warily eyeing Oakmore.
If you were to encase the remains in concrete, it would prevent the demon from moving. Then we could load the resulting concrete block aboard a ship. The ship would sail out into the ocean as far as it can, and the crew will dump the block into the water. The block will sink, and the pressure from the water will make it much more difficult for the demon to escape his new prison. And how, pray tell, would we get the demon out of my stomach? The High Dragon asked, eyeing the ever-growing group surrounding us. Oakmore couldn't help but grin as he said, I do believe a simple extrusion will suffice, Your Majesty.
A Cineraph's growl shook the ground beneath us.